What's up? Theoretically, eggs are a very good tasting food, but you know, most people don't really know what to do with them. So in this video, I'm going to show you the proper way to cook each of the 5 most popular styles of eggs. For every style of egg in this video, I've got a little restaurant secret that will help you upgrade them from meh to sick. And the last egg technique brings one of the most delicate and technical egg dishes in the world down to earth so that any home cook can make it. To get started, I'll grab a nonstick pan and drop it on the stove over medium-low heat. Now while that pan heats, I'm gonna crack an egg into a little dish. Thanks to Kenji, now I crack my eggs on the side of the container instead of on the cutting board. When you crack eggs onto a flat surface, you end up breaking open the shell a lot more, which makes the white leak out. And without fail, 1 in 5 of these eggs will have a broken yolk. Over at the stove, my pan is heated into the ballpark of 300F. I'm assuming you don't have a laser thermometer like me, so another way to test the heat of this pan is to add in a dime-sized drop of water and see how long it takes to come to a boil. It should be right about 3 seconds. Another visual metric I use is the butter. To fry these eggs, I'm gonna drop in a thin pad, and if the pan is at the right temperature, the butter should start to bubble and froth after 3 seconds, just like for the water. Once this pad of butter is melted, I'm gonna spread it all over, then grab my cracked egg and slowly, carefully pour it into the pan. I like to see the white set a little bit underneath as I pour it. Once the egg's in, I'll come back with a pinch of salt on top, and then this next step is optional, but it's definitely something that I like to do when cooking eggs in restaurants. I'll use my spatula to clean up those thin stragglers of white that are on the top and bottom of the egg. These parts are totally edible, it's just that they end up getting overcooked and tough, and if you want to go for a pro-level fried egg, in my opinion, you gotta lose them. Once the egg's cleaned up, I'm gonna cook it very gently and slowly over medium-low heat for 2 minutes or until the white has been mostly cooked through from the bottom up. The final step here is to carefully slide my spatula under the egg, flip it over, and then very gently cook it on the other side for 60 more seconds. If you're wondering why I'm not using the hot shot flick of the wrist move, well, because about 30% of the time, the force from the flip breaks open the yolk, and that becomes an over hard egg in seconds. Back at my carefully flipped egg, the way that I tell it's done is by poking the yolk area. It should have a decent amount of give to it, but not be so soft that it doesn't bounce back. Think of how the flesh between your thumb and pointer finger feels when your hand is in a relaxed position. In my opinion, the over medium egg is aesthetically perfect. It's got just a bit of jammy cooked yolk around the outer edges, then the middle lazily leaks out like molasses. With an over medium, the yolk acts as a nice velvety sauce and it coats the whites. Up next is a slightly more refined fried egg, the sunny side up. To make it, I'll drop my little nonstick pan on the stove again over medium-low heat. For me, the dial sits somewhere between 2 and 3, if that helps you get a feel for where the heat level is. Temp-wise, the pan's gonna be in the same place as for the over medium, which is around 300F. When the pan's hot, I'll add a teaspoon-size slither of butter and melt it. Butter over oil, mainly because it tastes better, but also the water inside the butter turns to steam during cooking, which helps prevent the egg from getting brown. Next, I'll gently lower a cracked egg into the pan from a little dish. This lets me drop the yolk right in the middle of the white instead of it naturally sliding to the outer edge. Now a quick sprinkle of salt, and then I'll do that optional step of cleaning off the scraggly bits of white. Skip it if you want. And after the eggs have been in the pan for about 30 seconds, I'll cover with the lid, then turn the heat down to low and gently cook for 2 minutes. This method uses the steam from the egg to gently cook the whole egg instead of just cooking it from the bottom up. After 2 minutes, when I pop off the lid, you can see that we've got a real beauty under here. The white is fully set and the outer part of the yolk is just set enough to be stable. By the time I get this over to the plate, the outer edge of the yolk has cooked just a little bit more. That's actually ideal. You definitely don't want any undercooked white near the yolk. Cut to a sunny side up egg that doesn't have this frosted white around the yolk. It looks like a cartoon version of a sunny side egg, and it'll probably get a lot of likes on Instagram, but look at the edges. You've got slimy, undercooked white, and that is my least favorite texture in the world. Yes, the egg looks a little bit better at first, but trust me, you definitely want that little bit of frosted egg white around the edges of the yolk. The yolk is still gonna be nice and runny underneath, and you won't have to deal with egg slime. Okay, the last fried egg method that I'm gonna show you is what I call the quick and dirty. pay attention. Into a high heat nonstick pan, I'll drizzle a bunch of olive oil, maybe 2 tablespoons. Then I'll crack 1 or 2 eggs right in, let them bubble and spit, then hit with a generous dose of salt. From here, I'll fry for 60 seconds or until the bottom side of the egg is nicely set and I've got some crispy browned edges. Next, I'll use my spatula to break open the yolk. Then I'll give it a little shimmy and I'll flip my egg over and fry on the backside for 20 seconds or just until the egg white is set. To finish, I'll drizzle on a spoonful of chili crisp. Recipe for mine linked in the description, by the way. And yeah, that's a bad boy way to cook eggs. Texturally, it's very dynamic. There's some runny yolk, there's some cooked yolks, there's crispy browned whites, and the whole thing is swimming in hot chili oil. It's a dream. Up next, I'm gonna show you guys how to make classic, well-executed scrambled eggs. For that, I'll start by cracking 2 to 3 eggs into a bowl. By the way, if you wanna cook double this amount for, say, 2 people, plan on using a 10-inch pan instead of the 8-incher that I'm using in this video. Next, I'll add in a small pinch of salt, and I usually eyeball this, but it's close to 1 gram for every 3 eggs. Next, I'll just grab a fork and whisk these eggs until they're as homogeneous as I can get them. Pre-salting eggs is kind of a hot topic among chefs, and some say never to do it. That seemed wrong to me, so I tested 3 methods: salting for 10 minutes before cooking, salting during cooking, and salting right before. The worst result was salting during cooking. Those eggs were a bit tougher and noticeably drier than the other 2. The best of the 3 was pre-salting for 10 minutes. Those eggs were firm but tender and had a bounce to them that was really pleasant. This makes sense because salt helps protein hold on to its water during cooking. So instead of being tough and dry, the pre-salted eggs are plump and full of their natural moisture. After 10 minutes, I'll grab my nonstick pan yet again and drop it over the same heat that I used for the fried eggs, which is medium low. Once I've got about a teaspoon pad of butter frothing and spread out, I'll add in my pre-salted eggs. From here, I'll stir right away for about 10 seconds. Then I'll scrape down the edges so nothing gets overcooked. Then I'll go back to the stir and shake maneuver. If you want larger, fluffier scrambled eggs, stir and shake 3 to 4 times over the course of about a minute. If you want smaller, creamier curds, stir 6 to 7 times. Once the eggs start leaving a trail, we're getting really close. From here, it's gonna take a little bit of finesse. If I over stir, the eggs are gonna be crumbly and they won't coalesce into a ribbony curd. If I under stir, the eggs will start to dry out and get brown in places. Now I'm gonna give this 1 or 2 more stirs to make sure the wet stuff gets a little bit of pan contact. Then I'll spread the eggs out, kill the heat, and let them carry over for 20 to 30 more seconds. The final texture should be moist, but not wet. You want just a little bit of shine on them. Scrambled eggs are usually utilitarian and made without care, but if you salt them for 10 minutes, cook them gently while stirring frequently, you'll end up with a very posh eating experience. These are soft, but a little bit bouncy and so creamy. It's a very humble indulgence. Also, if you're a real piece of shit like me, drown these things in ketchup. Next, I want to show you a special restaurant technique for cooking poached eggs. But first, I'll thank Seed for sponsoring this video. Around the time I started this YouTube channel, I started to get bloated all the time, which sucks. I don't know if I should pin that on work stress or the fact that I routinely eat mozzarella on camera. Regardless, about 4 years ago, I did some research and found the best probiotic on the market. That was well before we had sponsors on this channel, and eventually that product ended up being a sponsor on this channel. Seed. Seed's DSO1 uses 24 clinically and scientifically proven probiotic strains that also support skin health, your immune system, and heart health. As somebody who routinely has tummy troubles, here are some of the things that I like Seed for. It's formulated to reduce abdominal bloating after 2 weeks and improve gastrointestinal barrier function in 3 months. DSO1 is also clinically validated to strengthen your gut microbiome by increasing the good bacteria in your gut by 400%. When I'm taking DSO1 every day, I personally just feel like my gut is more resilient. So if you're looking for a great probiotic or just another lever to pull to help support your whole body health, I definitely recommend checking out Seed's DSO1. Just use my code Brian25 to get 25% off your first month of Seed's DSO1 Daily Symbiotic. To make these poached eggs, I'll combine 150 grams of water and 150 grams of white distilled vinegar in a medium bowl. From there, I'll crack in however many eggs I want. I'm going with 3, but this amount of liquid could easily contain 8 or even 10. Once the eggs are in the vinegar water, I'll set a timer for 10 10 minutes. The acid from the vinegar here pseudo cooks the egg white protein in the same way that citrus does in ceviche. This gives us a stable boundary on the egg so that it won't fall apart in the simmering water, and it makes the egg poaching process a lot more user-friendly. You'll see what I mean in just a second. While those marinate, I'll drop a wide saucepan on the stove and bring it up to a simmer. In total, I need about 2 quarts of water to poach these eggs, or about 4 inches of depth. Once that's boiling, I'll turn the heat down to low, then add in a strong 4-finger pinch of salt. Back in my egg ceviche, you can see that the outer edges of these egg whites have set into a protective layer that encapsulates the rest of the raw egg. Importantly, this will keep the white from sloughing off during the first part of the poach. Before I drop these in, I'll check my water temperature. Because poaching is meant to be a gentle cooking process, it requires water that's well below a boil, around 195 F. Now to cook these eggs, I'll use a ladle or a cup measure to carefully scoop them out of the bowl, along with whatever fluid is around them. Then I'll move them over to my pot of salted water and slowly drop the egg into the liquid. And once the egg's in, I'm gonna set a timer for 4 minutes. By the way, you can definitely cook more than one of these at a time. I've opted to just show one to highlight the technique as simply as I can. And after 4 to 4.5 minutes, when I scoop out my egg, I'll poke the yolk. It should have a similar bounce as the over medium egg from earlier in this video. Before serving, I'll just dab the egg off on some paper towel so I don't transfer vinegar to my eggs Benny or other brunch delicacies. Then it's time to cut in and see how we did. Oh my gosh, dude. Look at that. The white is perfectly set. It looks really clean. The yolk is jammy around the edges and it flows out of the middle like a rich golden lava. For me, that's the perfect poached egg. It's soft, it's delicate, and it brings out a certain egg texture that you can't get from any other cooking technique. Let's quickly compare this to the traditional way of poaching eggs. For that, I'll whisk up 2 liters of water that's been seasoned with 20 grams of salt and 100 grams of white distilled vinegar. Then I'll carefully drop a cracked raw egg right into the middle of that vortex. Right away, you can see the limitations of this technique. The egg white gets ejected from the core egg material as it sets in the vortex, so you end up losing about 25 to 30%. Of course, you can certainly make a nice poached egg with this method. It's just more rustic and it takes a lot more finesse. Curing the eggs in vinegar sets the outside, so you don't need a perfect swirling vortex and you don't need to worry about the egg falling apart in the water. Next up, let's talk hard boiled eggs. For me, that process starts with about 4 liters of water in a large stock pot brought up to a spirited boil. Once it's up, I'll grab a big length of cheesecloth that I folded in half, then lay out a dozen eggs into the middle. No, I cracked it. Okay, I'll carefully drop the rest of these eggs in, then I'll tie the ends off to make a tidy little bundle. From here, I'm gonna move this sack of eggs over to my boiling water and carefully drop them in. Cheesecloth is the best way that I've found to avoid shell breakage. It's because you can lower them in so gently and it keeps them from jumping up and down during the boil. But if you don't have it, you could very carefully lower these in with a slotted spoon or a spider. Just be warned that this method cracks about 1 out of every 12 eggs during the cooking because they float around so much. Now I'll turn my burner down to medium low and then set a 10-minute timer. And after 10 minutes, I'm gonna pull out this bundle of eggs and move it over to an ice bath. From here, I'll let these cool for 15 minutes. The best way to peel a hard-boiled egg is to crack them all over gently, then run them under a thin stream of warm water. The warm water gets under the shell and makes peeling it way easier. The shell just slides right off. In the comments right now, though, I can hear 1% of you guys saying, "That wastes so much water, bro." Let me just say that to peel 12 of these, you're gonna be using less than a toilet flush. Okay, now I'll cut into this egg to show you what 10 minutes of cook time looks like. You'll get set whites and yolks that are firm, but not chalky or dry. They've still got a little bit of gel in the middle. A 10-minute egg is my ideal snacking egg. It's perfect for eating straight up with some salt and pepper or putting on top of a salad. Other variations would be the 7-minute boil, which is usually what you'll get snugged up into a nice bowl of ramen. Or there's the 12-minute egg, which is fully set all the way through and ideal for making egg salad. By the way, if you want to learn how to make 3 delicious egg salads, I'll link my video for egg salad in the description. Now, the last egg technique is the most technical, but it's also the highest payoff by far. Of course, I'm talking about the French omelet. We'll start the same way we did for scrambled eggs. This time though, I'm just cracking in 2 eggs, then I'll hit them with a light 2-finger sprinkle of salt. Next, a fork goes in and I'll whisk vigorously to get the yolks and whites as homogeneous as possible. For aesthetic reasons, we want to avoid spots of egg white in the final omelet. Once whisked, I'm gonna let this sit for 10 minutes. For the same reasons as the scrambled eggs, pre-salting gives us results that are plump, moist and tender. 10 minutes later, I'll heat my small nonstick pan one more time to about 300F. Now to cook this thing, I'll start by dropping in a thin pad of butter, and as soon as it starts foaming up, I'm gonna spread it around the pan with my silicone whisk. Most French chefs will use a fork for this omelet, but that will definitely scratch your pan, so a silicone whisk is the next best thing. Next, I'm gonna grab my salted scramble and add that in. Now the whisk goes in, and I'm gonna stir these eggs for a count of 5. Once I'm there, I'll stir once around the edge to clean things up, then a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 count of stirring, then I'll scrape the outer edge, then another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 count. After 3 rounds, things are still looking wet, so I'm going to give it 2 to 3 more 5 counts with a stir around the outside in between. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And at this point, you can see the eggs have started to leave a trail. So next, I'm gonna grab my spatula and gently spread this wet curd into an even layer that coats the entire bottom of the pan. Do this quickly because you don't want the eggs to sit in one place for too long. They'll start to get dry and, even worse, start to brown. At this point, the top of the omelet should look like a combination of saucy egg custard and ribbons of set curd. Now for the fun part, I'll kill the heat, then using my spatula, I'm gonna lift my pan and carefully separate the omelet from the edges. Then I'm gonna roll it over itself gently, and I'll roll it and I'll let it fall towards the bottom edge of the pan. And there we go. I've got a beautiful torpedo shaped omelet. To keep it from overcooking, I'm going to immediately flip it out onto a warmed plate. This is an important detail. A cold plate will rob this omelet of its heat instantly, and it's not going to be nearly as luxurious of an eating experience. Let's see how we did. Ooh, soft and nice and custardy in there. Normally I don't like soft scrambled eggs. I think they're really kind of grainy and yuck, but for whatever reason, the way this omelet comes together, the textures are just so good. Silky is a word that I continuously overuse on this channel, but that's exactly what this is. It's pure luxury. Also, with the method that I showed you guys, this dish is gonna be accessible to a home cook. Most of the time, you're only gonna be able to get this in a super fancy restaurant made by somebody who's highly trained, but I kind of simplified it, and now you should be able to bust it out with maybe 1 or 2 practice tries. To recap, it's 5 or 6 rounds of a 5 count whisk, then a stir around the outside. Once the eggs are leaving a trail in the pan, stop, spread out the wet custard, then roll up carefully into a nice little torpedo. The inside of this omelet should be moist and silky, but not wet or raw. This is a fine line, but after a couple of tries, you'll get a feel for it and you'll understand that the French omelet is truly one of the best ways to eat an egg. If you guys want to watch another video from me, I'll link to one on the screen right here. It's about potatoes. You love those. See you there.